Welcome. Today I want to talk about an ancient Jewish meditation technique found in the Sefer Yetzirah, the book of creation. So let me share my screen and we'll begin. Okay, I'm pretty much just going to read through everything. So if you have trouble seeing the screen, no problem. I'm going to read it out loud to you. So today we're talking about an ancient meditation technique from the Sefer Yetzirah, the oldest extant book on Jewish mysticism. So welcome to this video. What I want to talk about today is an ancient form of Jewish meditation that is found in the Sefer Yetzirah, which in English is known as the Book of Creation or the Book of Formation. This is the oldest existing book of Jewish mysticism, and in a very succinct manner, it covers what is known in Talmudic times as the work of creation, which includes both something from something creation and something from nothing creation, and the work of the chariot, which today is believed to have been about meditative journeys that one could undertake. Interestingly, no one knows for certain when the Sefer Yetzirah was written, nor who wrote it. Nonetheless, based upon the Hebrew style and a trail of breadcrumbs in the Talmud, I believe it was written by the sage Rav Huna, who lived between 200 and 300 of the Common Era. Also, to support my interpretations of the Sefer Yetzirah, I'll quote two from the Bahir and the Zohar, two later mystical works that appeared respectively in the 12th and 13th centuries. However, before we dive into the Sefer Yetzirah, I want to examine a few threads that seem to be part of the underlying foundation of all Jewish mysticism. In particular, let's look at the following from Ecclesiastes 7:14. And this is my translation, more or less, directly from the Hebrew. So, this against this made the Elohim, in other words, God, to the end that man should find nothing after him. Now, the whole point of all the diversity we experience is to eventually arrive at an understanding of the oneness of creation. In other words, that man should find nothing after him. Additionally, does him with a small h or him with a capital H refer to man or to God? Well, we'll read later that the soul within man is God, and so we don't need to worry about the distinction. The Zohar passages below support the understanding that diversity was created so that we could understand unity and that we're here to learn. So, first one from the Zohar, light came forth on the right side and darkness on the left, and God afterwards separated them in order to, again, to unite them. As it is written, and God divided the light from the darkness. So here it states very explicitly that this division occurs in order so that we can later arrive at unity once more. Also, the whole is designed to teach us wisdom in all its aspects and all its manifestations, and so that man may discern between good and evil, between what wisdom teaches and what rejects. So in other words, we are here to learn, and the things we learn will bring us back to unity. Thus, in order to understand oneness, we have to begin our journey by experiencing what seems to be the exact opposite of oneness, what the Zohar calls the world of separation. And through our experience of diversity, we gradually begin to understand what oneness is. However, there's a third element that one finds in Jewish mysticism that is not explicitly stated in Ecclesiastes 7:14, namely that in addition to having two opposites, we also need a third principle that allows for the two opposites to interact in a dynamic way. And a careful reading of the Torah, however, reveals that a code word for this third element is the firmament. As we read in Genesis 1:6, and God said, let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters. And this is very suggestive. We're dividing water from water. It makes it look like we have more than one thing, but in reality, it's all just water. It's all one. That this firmament can act as a link or means of interaction between the two realms is confirmed by the Zohar passage below. And this passage says, "And God said, let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let divide waters from waters." Rabbi Judah said, "There are 7 firmaments above, all in the realm of supernal holiness, and the holy name is completed through them. The firmament mentioned here is in the midst of the waters. It rests upon other hayot." This is a word from the vision of Ezekiel. It means living beings or living creatures. So it rests upon other hayot, separating the upper from the lower waters. The lower waters call to the upper and drink them in through the medium of this firmament, because all the upper waters are collected in. And it then transmits them to these hayot, living beings, and so they draw from there. So the bottom line here is the firmament provides for interaction between the upper waters and the lower waters, interaction between opposites. Thus, the basic pattern for creation in Jewish mysticism is to have one thing opposite another plus a third element that allows for interaction between the two opposites. This pattern is quite prevalent in verses such as the following from the Sefer Yetzirah, where the opposites are fire and water, and air or steam, which is what you get when fire and water interact, is the mechanism for interaction between the two. So in Sefer Yetzirah, chapter 3, verse 4, it says, 3 mothers, Aleph, Mem, Shin. Those are letters from the Hebrew alphabet. Aleph, Mem, Shin in the world, air, water, fire. Heaven was created from fire, and earth was created from water, and air from spirit breath decides between them. The Hebrew word ruach can be translated as either spirit or breath, and so I give both translations here. And in the Sefer Yetzirah, you're going to find a variety of triads, but they're all equivalent. They're all different ways of emphasizing one thing opposite another and an interaction between them. Okay. Additionally, in the first verse of the Sefer Yetzirah, we read that God created the world with story, number, and communication. These represent respectively our right brain, left brain, and the interaction between the two hemispheres that results in the world that we perceive. So again, another triad. Okay, and that first verse, which we're really going to look at in detail, it says, with 32 wondrous paths, in particular netivot, of its own wisdom, it, Yah, the creator of multiplicity, created its universe with 3 books, i.e. Seferim, with story, Sefer, with number, Safar, and with communication, Sipur. Okay. However, an additional point to realize is that the Hebrew words for story, number, and communication all have the same 3-letter root of Samak, Pei, Resh. This suggests that the ultimate reality is oneness, and that all our attempts to separate things into opposites, such as the knower, the known, and the act of knowing, are ultimately an illusion. And this is like what we read previously with separating the upper waters from the lower waters. It's all waters. It's all water. It's all the same. Likewise, these opposites in the interaction, the words used all have the same 3-letter root. Okay, and the Zohar says as much. And this passage says, we have been taught that all this differentiation of the divine personality is from our side and relative to our knowledge, and that above all is one. All is set in one balance, unvarying and eternal. As it is written, I, the Lord, do not change, from Malachi 3:6. Now let's look at my translation of the first verse of the Sefer Yetzirah in a little more detail. Okay, it begins with the phrase, with 32 wondrous paths. And there's one tradition that in Genesis, God created the world with 10 utterances. And there's another tradition that God created the world with the 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet. And since 32 is equal to 10 plus 22, this number actually incorporates both traditions. Also, 32 is the numerical value of the Hebrew word lev for heart. And Deuteronomy 30:14 suggests that the Torah is very near to us and is contained within our own hearts. Furthermore, the word netivot denotes a footpath that a single individual would walk upon. And thus, the first sentence above suggests that each individual participates in the creation of their own world by means of the instructions embedded in their heart and the coordinated work of the right and left hemispheres of their brain. Okay, continuing with this first verse, I say, with 32 wondrous paths, netivot, of its own wisdom, it Yah. Okay, let me explain this. My use of the word it for God follows what some translators of the Zohar have occasionally done in order to emphasize the unknowable nature of God by removing references to gender or other qualities. Additionally, the name of Yah for God appears in some places in the Bible, such as Isaiah. In Hebrew, it is spelled Yud-He, where the Yud can stand for oneness or unity, Yachad, and the letter He is also the number 5. Thus, creation in the Sefer Yetzirah moves from unity to a 5-dimensional world of space, which has 3 dimensions, plus time, and then we also have a dimension of reality, good versus evil. Now, let's see, in my translation of this first verse from the Sefer Yetzirah, I have the expression, the creator of multiplicity. In Hebrew, this is the phrase, Adonai Tzabaot. I've translated it as creator of multiplicity, but is usually rendered as Lord of hosts. So let me explain this. Lord. But that is just what we substitute for the name Yud-He-Vav-He that we don't pronounce. However, linguists note that this 4-letter name probably means the one who causes being, or in other words, creator. And the word Tzavaot has the plain meaning of an army, a host of people, a host of soldiers. But its root actually denotes a multiplicity of something, and hence a more meaningful translation for our purposes is creator of multiplicity. Okay, now most versions of the Sefer Yetzirah also contain several appellations for God in this first verse. However, these appellations are not the same in all versions, and some versions leave them out entirely. When included, they represent that we can understand only parts of God and never the totality of God. So if we use appellations like just, merciful, long-suffering, those just reveal parts of God, not the whole thing. So nonetheless, I've chosen to include what is generally common to all versions of this verse. Now, we've already discussed Sefer, Safar, Sipur, which means story, number, and communication. And those correspond to right brain, left brain, and interaction between the two. But what we haven't seen yet is that these words, which give an example of 2 opposites in their interaction, can be melded together to give us a new word called Sefirot, which is going to appear in the next verse. Some will recognize that this word has a feminine ending, and that is fitting since, unlike later texts, the Sefer Yetzirah sees the female principle as coming before the male. In other words, everything is born of woman. Most cultures know that. Furthermore, the numerical value of the root Samach Pei Resh is 340, which is the same as the value of name in Hebrew. Thus, these 3 processes create everything we can name. They create all the objects. In subsequent verses of the Sefer Yetzirah, which we'll see soon, we encounter the phrase 10 Sefirot of nothingness, or in Hebrew, Eser Sefirot Balema, which I translate instead as 10 declarations of constraint, because in Bahir 125, the word Sefirot is interpreted as meaning declarations. In the Babylonian Talmud and Tractate Hulin 89b, the word Belima is seen as related to the verb balam, meaning to restrain. And this is likely the interpretation the original author intended, since the 10 creative utterances in Genesis result in the divisions and restraints that create the universe. Okay, in addition to Sefirot possibly being an amalgamation of the word Sefer, story, right brain, Safar, number, left brain, and Sipur, communication between the two hemispheres, the 10 Sefirot of nothingness are also a reference to the 3 mother letters and 7 double letters that are discussed elsewhere in the text. And other triads are equivalent to Sefer, Safar, and Sipur, though, are water, fire, and air, and wisdom, understanding, and knowledge. Also, the next slide represents a passage from the Zohar that connects the 3 with the 10. And the Zohar says, we're told, with 10 sayings the world was created. This is from Pirkei Avot 5.1, in other words, Chapters of the Fathers 5.1. Okay. Yet, on examination, they proved to be only 3: wisdom, understanding, and knowledge. So there you have it. So the 10 Sefirot of nothingness, or 10 declarations of constraint, they reduce down to just these 3 principles of one thing opposite another and interaction between them. So, as you can see, the Zohar too reduces all of creation to the interaction of 3 basic principles: wisdom, understanding, and knowledge, where these also correspond respectively in Jewish mysticism to water, fire, and air, and the other triads. Hence, it is just as correct to say that the world was created with 10 Sefirot, as it is to say that the world was created with the triad of Sefer, story, Safar, number, and Sipur, communication, or any equivalent triad. And now let's move on to our meditation technique that begins with my translation of the following verse, Sefer Yetzirah 1:4. 10 Sefirot of nothingness, declarations of constraint, 10 and not 9, 10 and not 11. Understand with wisdom and be wise with understanding. Examine with them and explore with them, and stand each thing, each word and thing on its wellspring, and return the assembler to its base. Okay, understanding and wisdom refer respectively in Jewish mysticism to the functions of the left and right hemispheres of the brain, as we've said. And in this passage, we are encouraged to use our entire brain to explore reality and return each thing to its source, our primary awareness. Additionally, many translations will use the word creator, where I have used singular. However, the Hebrew word yotzer refers to forming something from already existing materials. And so I find a singular to be a more apt description. Now, let me point this out. In the Babylonian Talmud, we learn that the pious ones used to spend up to an hour getting themselves in the right frame of mind before saying their prayers. And I'll read this Mishnah, this short piece. One should not stand up to say prayers save in a reverent frame of mind. The pious men of old used to wait an hour before praying in order that they might concentrate their thoughts upon their Father in heaven. Even if a king greets him while praying, he should not answer him. Even if a snake is wound round his heel, he should not break off. Okay. So similarly, to return the assembler to its base means to center your consciousness. We have to do that at the start. And to stand each word and thing on its wellspring means to follow each perception back to your awareness, back to the source of your consciousness, rather than letting your attention being directed outward toward objects. Hence, if you see a tree, then try and follow that perception to that place within you where it is understood and you know it is a tree. Don't focus on the tree, but on that which knows the tree. Okay, let's see. We have a new verse from Sefer Yetzirah, 1:6 here. So let me read this. 10 Sefirot of nothingness, declarations of constraint. Observe like a flash and mirror. Their purpose has no end, and the words and things of it are in them, running and returning. And to its utterances they rush like a whirlwind, and before its throne they bow. Now, when duality is created, it is like a ripple or flash of lightning that separates unity into an observer and an observed. Initially, the observed is a mere image of the observer, a vastity of nothingness, thingness. Subsequently, thoughts arise, and one thing combines with another, and then there is no end to the combinations and permutations that can be assembled. Okay, our initial way of looking at things is often in terms of consciousness running toward objects and then returning with information back to the source. Hence, running and returning, to borrow a phrase from Ezekiel. This is from the book of Ezekiel. It's part of his vision. Okay, however, there's a higher perspective from which this may be viewed. Namely, that everything takes place within consciousness and nothing ever leaves consciousness. When you realize that everything, like in a dream, is made of consciousness, then there is no more running and returning. There is only being. All perception seems to rush like a whirlwind to whatever we place our attention on, and then before its throne they bow, refers to the apparent return of what we've perceived to awareness. However, I say apparent because, again, in reality, we never leave awareness, and there is hence no place to run to and no place to return to. There is only awareness and the permutations awareness knows. And now for our meditation technique. It's very simple, and yet it can take years to master. It's also hidden in plain view, but little understood, and yet many and other cultures have discovered it independently over the millennia. And in many ways, it is like some forms of Buddhist mindfulness. 10 Sefirot of nothingness, declarations of constraint. Restrain your mouth from speaking and your heart from thinking. And if your mouth runs to words or your heart to reflections, return them to their place. Thus it is said, and the living beings, the Chayot, ran and returned, Ezekiel 1:14. And upon this word a covenant was cut. Okay, let's explain this. To begin, you have to quiet your mind and your inner voice. And you have to center yourself in your awareness. In some forms of mindfulness meditation, you may be asked to focus on whatever arises in consciousness. But here you're being asked to focus on that which perceives the objects of perception. Thus, if your words or mind run to any thought, then you return your focus to the unknowable knower that perceives that thought. Don't focus on the thought, but on what perceives the thought. Okay. The Hayot, or living beings referred to in Ezekiel, are, in this verse, like those bundles of passion and energy that emerge from our consciousness. Also, a good way to read the word Hayot is as Chai-ot, which can be translated as life signs or signs of life. And that's exactly what brain activity is. Furthermore, our brain activity results in a standard way in which we perceive our reality. And we might call this standard way of perception the covenant between our brain and the world. This meditation technique was likely known to St. Francis of Assisi, since he allegedly said, "What you're looking for is what is looking." Okay? You're looking for that which actually does, the perceiving. It was also known and taught by the 20th century sage Sri Atmananda Krishna Menon, who referred to it as the direct method, by which he meant a method that doesn't require anything other than simply redirecting all perception back to its source. So in other words, rather than focusing on the object we're perceiving, we let that perception lead us back to the perceiver. You see something, you focus on the perceiver which is seeing it. That's the whole point. That's the whole technique. Now, this method can be done with either eyes open or eyes closed, and I usually begin in the morning by first doing a 10-minute meditation relaxation program called TRIP using my virtual reality goggles. And that is a really great program. It produces that initial relaxation and makes it a lot easier to center yourself for this meditation. Next, I sit comfortably and close my eyes, and I comfortably turn them upward toward the top of my head. And for the next 30 minutes, if any thought or perception arises in consciousness, I just follow it to that place where it disappears into awareness. Again, what I'm breaking down into a three-part process of a thought arising, entering awareness, and disappearing is actually just a single step. In other words, as soon as the thought arises, it is simultaneously in awareness and simultaneously known. We never leave awareness, and when we fully understand this, then we're done. However, our brains still like to view this as a multi-stage process. In those terms, I could say that as we move closer to absolute awareness, we begin to feel more love, peace, and unity. And this is because since the perceiver within us is never itself perceived in the same manner as our usual objects of perception, the perceiver has no parts to discern. Thus, it is absolute oneness, and peace and love are just alternate terms for the same. After dwelling for a while in peace and beyond all duality, I then turn my attention outward and trying to extend this feeling of peace to the rest of the world, because right now such peace is sorely needed. Okay, so as we apparently move closer to this oneness that has no discernible parts, that automatically causes us to experience more unity, and in turn, love and peace. And then we can extend that peace outward to the rest of the world. And when I am done with my sitting meditation, I continue the process as a moving meditation with eyes wide open. In other words, as I go throughout my day, I continue to let every perception guide me back to that which perceives. And as I do so, I find myself less caught up in the whirlwind of thoughts and emotions in the outer world and more strongly attached to my awareness, the center of my being and the only thing inside me that truly appears as holy and immutable. Okay, so ask yourself, what in your experience is holy? What is the holiest thing within you? It's not the objects you see. It's not even the thoughts you have, for those are objects too. We can have thoughts and feelings which are very lofty, but they pass. The most permanent, the most holy thing within us, the thing which makes us alive, is that very awareness at the center of our being. And that's what we want to return to. Now, if you can go throughout your day with constant awareness of oneness while engaged with the world, then the Zohar calls this recognizing diversity below, but unity above. However, if you cling instead to objects of perception without recognizing the unified awareness behind all perception, then the Zohar calls this uniting below while dividing above. And that is what you want to cease doing. You want to be always on that border between the known and the unknown. So you perceive that unity while also seeing the diversity as you go about your daily life. So here's the verse from the Zohar. Herein consisted the sin of a primeval serpent who united below but divided above. and so cause the mischief we still lament. The right way, on the contrary, is to recognize diversity below, but unity above, so that the black light, in other words, the awareness that illumines but is not seen, becomes wholly merged above, and afterwards unified in respect of its diverse elements, and so is kept away from the evil power. Sometimes, however, you may find yourself troubled by something that you simply cannot ignore. It may be a period of anxiety or depression or some other trouble. In this case, you can't succeed in meditation by trying to sweep it under the rug. It is your shadow, and it will always come back to haunt you. Thus, what you have to do is to keep looking at this trouble and embrace it with your love and unity. And just as happens in quantum physics, every time you look at it, it will change until eventually it is no longer a problem. In Jewish mysticism, things that are negative or restrictive are associated with the left side, and positive and expansive things are associated with the right. And when you look at what is bothering us straight in the eye and surround it with love and mercy, the Zohar calls this embracing the left with the right. And this is what we must do when a problem is too severe to be ignored. We must look at it honestly and examine it, and we must direct our positive energy to help resolve it. And here are a few texts from the Zohar on embracing the left with the right. Okay, I will sing of the mercies of the Lord forever. Song comes from the side of the left, not chesed, mercy. So, with this introduction, the side of the left was embraced in the right. It was for this purpose, to combine left with right, that God tried Abraham in order that he might be found to unite justice, the left side, with mercy, the right side, and so be perfect. And here's another verse about Korach, who organized a rebellion against Moses and tried to change things up in an incorrect way. Okay, now Korach, the son of Izhar, the son of Kahat, the son of Levi, etc., he who makes the right left and the left right, as it were, lays waste to the world. Now Aaron represent the right and the Levites the left, and Korach sought to make the right and the left change places, and therefore he was punished. Further, the evil tongue was also found. For that also he was punished. Rabbi Judah said, and here it is, the left should always be embraced in the right. You always take that side of mercy and use it to embrace the side of evil or restriction or harshness. Well, Korach sought to change the order fixed both above and below, and therefore he was punished. Therefore he perished both above and below. And here's another passage. It is written above, and all the wise men that wrought all the work of the sanctuary came, etc. Exodus 36:4. The wise men that wrought embraced the right and the left, and all the other sides constituting the ways and paths that lead into the sea and fill it. Okay, the sea in this passage represents the sea of consciousness, into which everything flows. And the wise not only combine the right and the left, but all things with this primary awareness. And this way, everything points them back to pure awareness. Now, in Judaism, Yud-He-Vav-He is the four-letter name of God that we don't pronounce. And we generally say Adonai or Lord in its place. And in the Zohar, this four-letter name, Yud-He-Vav-He, is generally associated with the ineffableness of God, the God that is beyond measurable characteristics and comprehension. In contrast to this, though, is the God named Elohim, which is used when we do ascribe characteristics to God. However, these are not two separate gods, and the author of the Zohar stresses multiple times that the God we can understand and the God we cannot understand are simply two sides of the same ineffable coin. On the slides that follow are Zohar passages that emphasize the oneness of Adonai and Elohim, and hence the oneness of the world of unity with the world of diversity, as well as the oneness between God and what appears as our own awareness. Enjoy contemplating these passages. Okay. The first one says, when it came to the lower creation, it gave a name to the creator who was now discoverable and said, Elohim created the heavens and the earth. So here it tells us that Elohim is the discoverable God, the God that we can give characteristics to. Thus, the first, Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, which is the higher, remains shrouded in mystery, while the lower is disclosed, so that the work of the Holy One, blessed be He, should be ever both hidden and disclosed. Okay, next couple of passages. Rabbi Hiah discoursed on the verse, with my soul have I desired thee in the night. Yea, with my spirit within me will I seek thee early. Isaiah 26:9. It does not say here, he remarked, my soul desires thee, but my soul, I desire thee. The explanation is, as we have learned, that God is the soul and spirit of all. Okay, so this is why I said earlier, with respect to that passage from Ecclesiastes, it doesn't matter whether him is with a small h referring to you or him is with a capital H referring to God. The soul and spirit within all is God. Okay, next passage. That point is called Ani. That's the Hebrew word for I. And upon it rests the unknown, the Most High, the unrevealed one, which is Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, both being one. Okay, so the I within us, that is actually God. Now, sometimes I make a distinction between what I call the little I and the big I, the I behind the I. The little I is the ego, the I we give characteristics to, like I am this, I am that. The I behind the I is just that pure awareness, the I am. Okay, let's move on. Okay, here, the two I's are going to be considered the same. So, Ani, I, is sovereign over this world and of the world to come, all being dependent upon on it. Whereas the other one, which in Hebrew other is acher, the other one side of impurity, the other side has rule only in this world and none at all in the other world. And hence whoever cleaves to that Ani, I, the I am, has a portion in this world and in the world to come. But he who cleaves to that acher, the other one, perishes from this world and has no portion in the world to come. Okay, as I just said, there is the I or ego that we give characteristics to, such as when we say, I am strong or I am smart. And then there's the I behind the I, which is the unknowable observer, the I am. It is this latter I that rules all. In contrast to this, the world of duality, the world of all the objects we perceive, that is acher, or the other side. Okay, here is the bottom line, the most important passage probably in the entire Zohar. The only aim and object of the Holy One in sending man into this world is that he may know and understand that Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh is Elohim. This is the sum of the whole mystery of the faith, of the whole Torah, of all that is above and below, of the written and the oral Torah, all together forming one unity. The essence of the mystery of faith is to know that this is a complete name. All right, in other words, the whole point of our creation is to understand that the known, Elohim, and the unknown, Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, the perceived and the perceiver are one and the same, and that all is one. Or as The Buddhists express it. Nirvana is samsara, and samsara is nirvana. Nirvana is the world is nirvana. Oneness is duality, duality is oneness. With the meditation technique described in the Sefer Yetzirah, we can realize this. Another passage from the Zohar. When mankind will universally acknowledge this absolute unity of Elohim and Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, the evil power, also called Sitra Akra, the other side, itself will be removed from the world and exercise no influence on earth. Now, I often make the distinction between what I call hard non-duality and soft non-duality. I define hard non-duality as a proposition that all is one and that all separation is merely an illusion. In contrast to this is soft non-duality, which states that even if the world of multiplicity has an absolute existence, everything we experience still occurs only in consciousness. And as in a dream, all that we know is just a manifestation of consciousness. I believe in hard non-duality, but even if soft non-duality is the case, then we are still compelled to proceed as if all is one, because that is how awareness perceives it. And once oneness is realized, separation disappears. So we make this distinction between oneness and duality or multiplicity, but there's a higher understanding where they become absolutely the same. As I say, they're just sort of two sides of the same ineffable coin. And finally, what should the righteous person do? Well, they should pray for all things and visualize all things as being unified. And then they should engage in actions that help to bring about that vision. The righteous person should always strive to bring about unity. And from the Zohar, when mankind are sinful and there's a righteous man in the world, God speaks with him in order that he may pray for mankind and obtain forgiveness for them. God first promises to save him alone and destroy the rest. Now, the proper thing for a righteous man to do at such a time is to forget himself and espouse the cause of the whole world in order to appease God's wrath against them, as Moses did when Israel sinned. So this is what the righteous should do, particularly now, which seems like a very precarious time. You put aside your own wants and needs. You think about what's going to benefit the whole world. At this time, you put your small concerns aside and you pray for the entire world. You visualize the whole world coming together in oneness and peace and love. And hopefully through the quantum interconnection of all things, that will make a difference. And just to be sure, you also engage in those physical actions that will help bring about a better world. So that's what we need to do right now. And that's how we can apply this meditation to help make this a better world for all. Okay, and so in that I have a picture of this sort of well-known Kabbalistic maze down here, right here. And so I'll say, may you find your way through the maze, or as I like to say, not Mazel Tov, but Mazel Tov. Find your way through this world. We're all in a maze trying to get back to the center. And with this meditation technique, may you find the center and experience oneness and see all this duality and multiplicity disappear, even while you're engaged with the world. Okay, so that's it. And that's ending with a little humor. And I'll go ahead and stop my share. And I wish you all success with this particular meditation technique. And I hope it's good for you as it has been for me. And with that, I wish you all well. And I say goodbye and shalom, peace and wholeness Amen.